What's up, y'all? Brandon with BC Talks here. Y'all know, in addition to being a comic and geek culture fan, here on the channel, we also talk a lot about movies. So if you're not subscribed already, definitely hit that subscribe button and like the video for more movie content on the channel as well. We talk about movies a lot here on the channel, and y'all know I love movies. I'm an AMC A-list member, and I saw about 50 movies last year, not including movies on streaming. That's just in the theaters. And of the 50 movies, I saw many of them twice or three times, some of them. So I saw a lot of movies last year. In my opinion, AMC A-List, if you're a movie fan, it's the best subscription service, even if you're not. If you just see two movies a month, it already pays for itself. It's the best subscription service, and that's not an ad, because y'all know I don't get paid for this. I do this for the love of the game. But like I said, I saw about 50 movies last year in the theaters, and I am gonna give y'all my top 10 favorite movies of 2024. Here in a few weeks, or the next couple weeks, I'll be giving y'all my most anticipated for 2025. It feels like it was just a few months ago that I gave my 2024 list. But we'll start off 2024, my most favorite movies, with Nosferatu. Nosferatu is going to kick off the list at number 10. Nosferatu is directed by Robert Eggers. It is the remake of the 1922 silent film Nosferatu, which itself was inspired by Bram Stoker's Dracula. Again, it's directed by Robert Eggers and has a stacked cast starring the likes of Lily Rose Depp, Nicholas Hoult, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Willem Dafoe, Bill Skarsgård, and many others. If you watched my most anticipated list of 2024 back in January 2024, which I'll put a link to that video if you want to go back and watch that, I actually had Nosferatu on my list for the most anticipated, just off the back of the cast and Robert Eggers himself. So I was already looking forward to it. Robert Eggers, he's becoming one of those directors to me, like Denis Villeneuve or Christopher Nolan, to where I'll go out and see any movie they put out just off the strength of the director's name. He's that good to me. I really love the way he shoots his movies. He's really good at tension in scenes and getting the emotion out of actors. Like the way he just blocks the shots and the way the scenes are shot. I don't know. It's if you've seen a Robert Eggers movie, you know what I'm talking about. Just the way he shoots scenes is really interesting, and really gorgeous to look at. And it's no different in Nosferatu. This is a really beautiful movie to look at. There's a lot of scenes in here where they could be like posters on your wall if you just took a clip of the scene. And but outside of that, the movie itself is really great. The actors are all great. It's a stacked cast, and Lily Rose Depp was one of the actors that I was skeptical about going into the movie, because y'all know she's the daughter of Johnny Depp. I thought that she might not be as strong of an actress amongst this cast of great actors, but I thought she really held her own and she stood out, in my opinion. She was probably my favorite performance in the movie. It was originally supposed to be Anya Taylor-Joy, and then Lily Rose Depp took over the role. And I honestly couldn't see Anya Taylor-Joy putting in the performance that Lily Rose Depp did. She brought a really sort of a calm darkness to her performance, and which really only she could have done. I was blown away by her performance. It was really great. And Bill Skarsgård as Nosferatu, or Count Orlok as he's also known, he was really great as well. Bill Skarsgård is always great. All the Skarsgård brothers are great, but he was in this movie, and he always puts in a good performance, and I thought they did a great job here. Sometimes when you do the the Dracula count voice, it can be kind of silly. Like Adam Sandler in the Hotel Transylvania movies, that's kind of the whole shtick of it, that he does the blah blah blah. But so I was wondering how he was gonna play Nosferatu in the movie. He does the accent, but he does it in an authentic way that doesn't take you out of the movie. It feels natural, and the count is just haunting. The count is disgusting. And he does a really great job of playing that. But all the performances in this movie are really great. Willem Dafoe is another actor that I wasn't expecting in this movie. I didn't know he was in the movie until he showed up, which I should have expected because he's in Robert Eggers' other movies. But anytime Willem Dafoe pops up in a movie, even though he kind of plays the same character in every movie, he's always great. I'm never mad when I see Willem Dafoe. He has a special place in my heart as the Green Goblin. But every character that he plays, he's always great in it. Even though he plays similar characters in most movies. But overall, like I said, the cast is amazing. The Nicholas Hoult as well is really great. Aaron Taylor Johnson puts in a great performance. All of them do. Even if you're not a fan of vampire or horror movies, I'm the biggest vampire fan myself. Or horror movie, really. I'm more of a thriller guy, like psychological thriller than horror. But even if you're not a fan of those, I definitely recommend going to see Nosferatu. Coming in at number 9 on my list is going to be A Complete Unknown, directed by James Mangold, starring Edward Norton, Elle Fanning, Monica Barabo, and Timothy Chalamet as Bob Dylan. Now, this is a Bob Dylan biopic set specifically during the 5-year period before his conversion from acoustic folk to electric folk slash rock music, which was becoming popular at the time. It was really controversial at the time because he was seen as this folk hero, and he was going over to the dark side to electric music. And that was culminates at the 1965 Newport Folk Festival, that performance. Now, Timothy Chalamet, he's on a generational run that needs to be studied.
Shout out Lil B. Nothing possible without Lil B. Pray to the bass god.
He is putting in some great performances these past few years. Y'all know, y'all probably can guess he's on my list again later on. But his portrayal as Bob Dylan in this movie is no different than any other portrayal that he's put in the past few years. It is astounding here. Now, I'm not gonna lie to y'all. I'm not a big Bob Dylan fan. Not because I don't like Bob Dylan. I just never got into his music really. But I do respect him for what he did for music and also for social justice causes. A lot of people don't know he was really big into social justice causes. He actually played at the March on Washington before Martin Luther King's "I Have a Dream" speech.
Mr. Bob Dylan.
A lot of people don't know that. He did a lot of work for social justice in the 60s, really his whole life, but it really started in the 60s where he got into that when he met his first girlfriend. She got into that. The character that Elle Fanning plays, her name's escaping me at the moment, but the character that Elle Fanning plays got him into that, and then he kind of, the rest of his life, was kind of a champion for different social justice causes. So I respect him for that, but I just never really got into his music. I'm not as familiar with his music. But even if you're not familiar with his music like me, it is still just a great movie to watch for the performances. They recorded all the music live, which they don't often do in music biopics, so it has sort of a more of an authenticity to the performances. Timothy Chalamet and all the rest of the actors and actresses learned how to play the music and sing just like them, and so it, like I said, it brings more of an authenticity to the music performances, which I really liked. I kind of wish they had done that with the Bob Marley biopic that came out earlier in the year as well. Like I said, Timothy Chalamet is great in this movie. Monica Barabo also surprised me here. I've only ever seen her in Top Gun 2, the remake that came out a few years ago. But she really, I think she should get more work. She did a great job in this movie, opposite of Timothy, and Timothy really immersed himself in the role here. He looks like Bob Dylan, sounds like Bob Dylan, sings like him, acts like him. The little eccentricities that Bob Dylan had. He's just like him while also not feeling like a caricature. And all the performances are great in this movie. Timothy, in my opinion, deserves an Oscar nomination for his performance. We'll see if he actually gets one. But even like I said, even if you're not a Bob Dylan fan or you're just not familiar with his music or his life, I definitely recommend you see the movie. It's not a biopic of his whole life. It's just that 5-year period, so you're not sitting there forever. And it's really paced really well. The story is really interesting and engaging. A lot of conflict. So yeah, I definitely recommend seeing A Complete Unknown. Number 9 on my list is Anora. Anora is directed by Sean Baker and stars Mikey Madison as the titular character. Now, this movie is about a young sex worker who meets and falls in love with the son of a Russian oligarch, and gets mixed up in this family and goes on a crazy, funny, and ultimately heartbreaking thrill ride. Now, I didn't know anything about this movie going into it other than it had some great word of mouth and really great reviews. And while I was watching the movie, like the first half of the first act of the movie, I was like, I don't know if this movie's really for me. I was feeling kind of mad about it. I'm not like usually into like slice of life type movies, but once Anora gets married and kind of the adventure, so to say, really starts, that's when the movie really picks up for me. And I wasn't expecting it to be like a comedy. I was expecting more of like a drama, but it's kind of like a dramedy, but that kind of second act into the first half of the third act is really like a comedy. And this like family is crazy, it's wild, and it's nothing of what I was expecting at all. And Mikey Madison, she's been getting a lot of buzz around the Oscars for a nomination. She's probably going to get nominated. I think she puts in a really great performance here, and it's well deserved. And like I said, this sort of slice of life film is not typically the kind of movies that I like to watch. But I thought it was really well done here. The dialogue and the interpersonal relationships between the characters is great. The comedy hits; it's really funny. But it's not like like quippy one-liner jokes. It's just like situational comedy, really. And it's ultimately kind of culminates into this really heartbreaking and thought-provoking story about this girl who gets kind of caught up in this family. So if you're even if you're not into like slice of life type movies like I am, I think there's something in this movie for everybody, and it's really great performances as well. Like I said, it's kind of like a wild romp that they go on, and it definitely worked for me and earned a place as number 8 in my top 10. At number 7 on my list is My Old Ass. Keeping with the slice of life film theme, My Old Ass is directed by Megan Park and has a relatively lesser known cast, at least to me anyway, but it does star Aubrey Plaza, who plays the 40-year-old future version of the main character Elliot, who she meets after tripping off mushrooms. Now, I actually found this movie. I hadn't heard of it. I found it through AMC's Screen Unseen, which is screenings that AMC does every so often, where they'll show like a mystery movie. So you buy the ticket, you don't know what the movie's going to be beforehand. It's like a mystery movie, and then so you don't know until you actually get into it. And so I hadn't heard anything of this movie, but when I saw it, and I saw it way before, like a month or two before it actually came out in wide release. So it was very interesting. I didn't know anything about it going into it, what I was getting into, but I really enjoyed this movie. Like I said, I'm not usually a slice of life movie type fan, but this movie in particular was really great. I'm always on board anytime Aubrey Plaza shows up in a movie, and she put a really great performance here, in my opinion. And it's a very heartwarming story about the fears of the future, growing older, love and relationships, friendships, all sorts of great themes come together in this movie, and it's just a really enjoyable movie to watch and gives you a lot to think about as well. And so I really like movies where you're given a lot to think about. So even though the genre isn't necessarily the type of movie I go for, I really enjoyed the movie a lot to think about. And Aubrey Plaza does great. The male actor whose name is escaping me right now, I didn't write it down, so I can't remember his name, but he's really great in it as well. But yeah, all the performances are really great. I really enjoyed the movie. It's funny, it's heartwarming, and I definitely recommend seeing it. Keeping with the theme of movies I don't usually watch but really enjoyed, at number 6 is going to be We Live in Time. We Live in Time is directed by John Crowley and stars Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. This is one of those slice of life, the significant other has cancer or some other type of terminal illness movies that are usually not my cup of tea. But We Live in Time was an exception for me. It was a fun yet heartbreaking adventure through the two main characters' lives, and I really like how they told the story out of sequence. So it's the movie. Um, is the scenes are out of sequence. It's not a linear storytelling. So one moment they might have a scene from when they're younger, then they'll flip to a scene towards the end of their life, and then go to a scene in the middle. So it kind of tells the story out of sequence with the scenes, and I thought there was a really creative way to tell this story that's been told a lot of times before. And also Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield, they're two of my favorite actors working right now. So I'm kind of biased, but they, even despite that, they both put in really great performances, and they really carry the movie, even though it really is just the two of them and this kid they have, and a couple of other tertiary characters. But they're really the two main driving forces for the movie. And I could watch a movie of just the two of them, making pancakes or hanging out for a day, which is kind of what the movie is really. There's a sort of like a not a subplot, but kind of like a B plot of her in a cooking competition kind of thing, which kind of causes some conflict there as well. But the overall, I thought the movie was done really great. The I like how it's like told out of sequence. Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh put in great performances. They both should be nominated for Oscars, in my opinion. Although I don't think both of them will. I think that Florence Pugh might. I don't know if this movie has enough Oscar buzz. I haven't been hearing enough about it, and with the Golden Globes, I don't think it got any nominations, if I remember. So we'll see if they get them. I think they both deserve it, but even if they don't, they both put in great performances, in my opinion. And I definitely recommend seeing this movie, even if you're not a fan of those, one of the significant others has a terminal illness movies, like I'm not. It's still a really great and enjoyable watch. Moving on from slice of life type films to a genre that is more familiar with my channel, at number 5 is Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, this might be surprising, like I said, given the content on my channel, but Deadpool and Wolverine is actually the only comic book movie on this list. The year was kind of sparse for comic book movies. It was really Deadpool and Wolverine, and then the Sony movies, which we weren't expecting much of, and they definitely delivered exactly what we were expecting, which is not much. So Deadpool and Wolverine is the only comic book movie on my top 10 of 2024, and it comes in at number 5 here on my list. Deadpool and Wolverine is directed by Sean Levy and stars Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, returning to the character after seemingly retiring from the character, as well as many other Fox X-Men related characters that come back. Now, this was one of the most anticipated comic book movies of the past several years. I'd say since Spider-Man No Way Home, and it had a tall order, and it delivered and then some. If you watched my upcoming comic book movie preview, or my reaction to the Deadpool Wolverine trailer that came out, which I'll put a link for that as well. If you watch that, you'll know that I was looking forward to this movie a lot, and I had a lot of theories. Everybody did, about what the movie would be, but I thought that they did a really great job. It wasn't what we were expecting, but it was what we needed. I think it's a really great movie, and it's really what in my opinion, not to trash other MCU movies, but in my opinion, it's what Multiverse of Madness should have been, even though the story isn't really connected to the overall MCU plot, other than the fact that at the end it brings Deadpool, Wolverine, X-23, and possibly a couple other characters, according to deleted deleted scenes, if you see those, to the MCU. Other than bringing those characters to the MCU, it doesn't affect the greater overall plot of the MCU, but it's really a love letter to the Fox and X-Men universe. They really did a great job of both giving reverence to those movies while also making fun of them. That's a really hard thing to balance, and I thought they did a great job of that as well. It had a lot of things it needed to do. It needed to be a sequel to two Deadpool movies. It needed to be one of the biggest comic book movies of the past few years. It needed to bring back a character that's beloved in Wolverine in a meaningful way. It needed to, connect to the MCU without being convoluted or derivative. And it was able to balance all of those things and then more. It's really well. And like I said, it's a really great love letter to the Fox universe. When Wesley Snipes shows up as Blade, and then you get to see, Channing Tatum finally get to play Gambit, which we had been looking forward to for years and years. I remember when they announced that movie and then he came out at Comic Con. He was so excited, and the movie never got made. And seeing Wesley Snipes back as Blade, really, comic book movies as we know them today started with Blade. A lot of people go back to Spider-Man, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, but before that was Blade in the late '90s, and that was really the first Fox comic book movie that was popular, and it was rated R. And so then after Blade, Spider-Man came, then we got the X-Men, and then it kind of expanded from there. We got to see Jennifer Gardner as Elektra. We got to see X-23 come back, now older. We got to see Chris Evans come back as Johnny Storm, which I never thought we'd see again. I think Wesley Snipes as Blade, and then Chris Evans as Johnny Storm are two characters I was not expecting to be in this movie. We had kind of known that Elektra was going to be in it. We saw in the trailer they kind of leaked that X-23 was going to be in it, which I kind of wish they kept that a surprise. We figured Channing Tatum would be in it as Gambit, but Johnny Storm, I was not expecting to see him in the movie, and it was really great. A lot of fun seeing Chris Evans get to play that character again as well. And then the end credit scene where he's just going off. It's hilarious too.
That's right, Wade. I won't be happy until I've urinated on her freshly barbecued corpse and husked the charred remains while gargling Juggernaut's Juggernuts. Wow. And you can quote me.
I watch that every so often, that end credit scene with Chris Evans as Johnny Storm, that rant he goes on. It's really funny if you haven't seen it. But yeah, so it's Deadpool and Wolverine. I think it's the best comic book movie since No Way Home. I think that and Guardians 3. Guardians 3, I think, is a better movie, like structurally, and it's a better story. But Deadpool and Wolverine is really great as well. I think it's like that and then Deadpool and Wolverine. Just off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember any other comic book movies that have come out since No Way Home. And then that Green Day montage at the end of the movie was really touching as well, and a great tribute to the Fox universe and a good way to say goodbye because now Disney has the rights to all those characters. So that, yeah, Deadpool and Wolverine comes in right in the middle on my list at number 5. Number 4 on my list is an animated film that is The Wild Robot. The Wild Robot is directed by Chris Sanders and also has a stacked cast featuring a lot of actors, including Pedro Pascal, Bill Nighy, Ving Rhames, Mark Hamill, and Lupita Nyong'o as the titular wild robot. Now, when I first saw this movie, I was sitting there and I thought I kind of knew how the plot was going to go, and I thought I had the movie figured out. But it really kind of subverts your expectations, and it tells a simple story, but it tells it really well. The premise of the movie is simple. It's a helper robot that is built to solve problems and help humans, gets stranded and lost in the forest, and then it has nobody to help and comes upon a lost gooseling that it actually, when it gets stranded and lands, kills the mother, so it's the only remaining gooseling, and so now it has to raise this, or gosling, I should say, not gooseling, gosling, it has to raise this gosling with a, kind of a cunning fox and a whole other host of characters in the forest. And like I said, the story is really simple, but it kind of blindsides you with how well it tells such a simple story. And the animation is beautiful. The voice acting is all great. Everybody in the cast, like I said, it's a stacked cast here as well, and they all put in great performances with the voice acting. It's a heartwarming and lovely story with a lot of themes and things to think about, motherhood, children, found family, things of that nature. And even though I don't have any children myself, the story really resonated with me, and I definitely suggest anyone who hasn't seen it, even if you're not a fan of animation, to go see The Wild Robot. At number three on my list is Challengers. Challengers is directed by Luca Guadagnino and stars Mike Fast, Josh O'Connor, and Zendaya. Now, much like I mentioned how Robert Eggers is a director who I'll watch anything he puts out, Luca Guadagnino is in that same category. He's really an auteur. He makes really interesting movies that aren't like a lot of other movies that are out there today. And when you watch a Luca Guadagnino movie, you know kind of the style you're going to get, the look of the movie, and you know that you're going to have stellar interpersonal relationship dynamics and dialogue as well. And all that is present in Challengers and more. Now, I know very little about tennis, but the movie had me hooked. With the matches and the dynamics between the tennis players, the different shots in the matches that he does are really interesting as well. And I think that people got the wrong impression of this movie after that first trailer dropped, because the scene with Zendaya in the trailer, it kind of went viral. That scene, that scene you've probably seen a GIF or meme of it with Zendaya on the bed and then the two male co-stars kissing her. That kind of went viral as a meme and a joke, and people kind of judged the movie off of those memes and clips. But the movie isn't really about that at all. The core of the movie is about Zendaya's character, Tashi, who, as a kid, she didn't have the structure and financial situation like a lot of tennis players have. Usually tennis players come from money, because you need to have trainers and equipment and all kind of stuff. But she kind of gets it out the mud, and she has that kind of Mamba mentality to win. She's really fierce competitor. She has this drive and competitive drive to win, that Mamba mentality. And so she kind of built herself into the best tennis prospect in the world. And then later on, early in college, she has a career ending knee injury, and that reshapes her entire outlook on life. She can't play tennis anymore, so she kind of doesn't. She kind of has like a crisis of self. And because of that, she still has the intensity and drive to compete, but she can't compete physically. So she kind of drives her then boyfriend, who is played by Mike Fast. That's the character Art, who was her then boyfriend and later becomes husband. She kind of drives him to she kind of lives vicariously through him. And Art is kind of the opposite of her. He kind of had that silver spoon growing up, where he didn't have a lot of people driving him to become great. He kind of just was kind of built into that because of his financial situation and upbringing. He doesn't have quite the talent that she had, or the drive, but she kind of pushes him. She lives vicariously through her boyfriend and then husband, and pushes him to become one of the best tennis players in the world. Meanwhile, there's this other character, Patrick, who is Josh O'Connor's character, who is Art's childhood friend, and in college they all meet as well. Who is super talented, so he has the talent, unlike Art, but he lacks the drive to be great. So the whole movie is essentially like a power struggle between Zendaya's character Tashi, who is kind of controlling. She's like a control freak. She's controlling these two men to kind of do what she wants and living vicariously through them. And it's really interesting, like I said, relationship dynamics. Luca Guadagnino is really great at that. The interpersonal relationships and like the power dynamics in this kind of triage or triad relationship here is really interesting and really well done. In my opinion, Challengers is criminally underrated. I think that it's a really great movie. I really love Luca Guadagnino. I'll watch anything he puts out. It's a really interesting movie, and I definitely recommend, if you kind of got the wrong impression of the movie based off of memes and whatnot, to definitely go check it out. Number two on my list, and this surprised even me, is Wicked Part 1. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of musicals, so the fact that Wicked Part 1 is as high as it is on my list, like I said, surprises even me. Wicked Part 1 is directed by John M. Chu and has a great cast starring Ariana Grande as Galinda and Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba, or later known as the Wicked Witch of the West, among many others. And like I said earlier, I'm not the biggest fan of musicals because I have childhood trauma from The Sound of Music. I've seen The Sound of Music like probably 100 times, maybe more, because my grandma on my dad's side, that was one of the few VHSs she had. So anytime we would go over to stay with her, that we would watch that movie all the time. So I kind of got PTSD for musicals from The Sound of Music. Later on, though, like more recently, been coming around to musicals, but it's kind of like a joke thing I have with The Sound of Music. So, but despite that, I went to go see Wicked. I didn't know much about I know a little bit about the story, but I wasn't as familiar, and I actually didn't know that it was so much of a comedy. It's actually a really funny movie, so that kind of surprised me. I thought it was more of a drama, but it's really like a dramedy and it has a lot of comedy in it. And speaking of the comedy, Ariana Grande, she does a really great job as Galinda in the movie with her comedy. I wasn't expecting that out of her. You know, she did start on Nickelodeon, with Sam and Cat and all that, and she was those Nickelodeon shows are technically comedy, even though it's kind of very structured comedy with laugh tracks that's very fake. So that's not really comedy, but so Ariana Grande in this movie really shows her chops, and Galinda is actually a character that she wanted to play since she was a kid. So, and you really see that here. You really see she really enjoyed her performance. It kind of shines through in her performance. And Cynthia Erivo as Elphaba is also really great. I thought it is, in the play, she is played. She's not black in the play, but it really is interesting to me to have anyone other than a black person play Elphaba, because it's kind of like that dual thing where she has the green skin. So a black person can really kind of tap into that feeling of otherness and not belonging when you're in a room full of all these other people that are looking at you and whatnot. So it's really interesting that she isn't played by a black woman in the play, at least not in like the Broadway play. And so, but I thought Cynthia Erivo brought a really great performance here. Her singing is great. She's does all the music like a complete unknown. She's singing all that music live. So when she's flying around at the end, singing Gravity, and she's flying around on wires singing. If you watch the behind the scenes, it's crazy that she's able to sing so good when she's flying around on wires and whatnot. So really great performances by everyone in this movie. And the movie, like I said, it's funny, it's touching, the music is all great, and I'm really looking forward to part two, which is called Wicked for Good. And because from what I've read and what I've heard, it's going to get really interesting tying in all of the Wizard of Oz lore now that the Elphaba is kind of out as the Wicked Witch now. It's going to tie in all that lore. So I'm really interested to see where the rest of this story goes in part two. And I think everybody's seen Wicked by now. But if somehow you haven't, definitely go out and see it. Even if you're not a fan of musicals like myself, the music is really fun in the movie and really well done. So it's not kind of out of place or doesn't mess up the pacing of the movie. I think it was all really done really well. It's a great movie, and it is number 2 on my list. And at number 1 on my list, unsurprisingly, if you are a follower on this channel, is Dune Part 2. Dune Part 2 is directed by one of my favorite working actors, Denis Villeneuve, and has another stacked cast led by Timothée Chalamet as Paul Atreides. Now, if you like I said, if you're familiar with the channel, I talk about Dune. I've talked about Dune many times on the channel. Some of my earliest videos were Dune content, and some of my most viewed videos and shorts are content related to Dune. I really enjoyed the first movie, and I was really looking forward to the second part here. If you go back to my most anticipated list, it was number one on my most anticipated list of the year, and it delivered. In ways that we weren't even expecting, in my opinion. I know a lot of people thought that the first part of Dune was a lot slower because it had to kind of set up the narrative. It had a lot of world building it had to do and whatnot, backstories for the characters, and set their motivations and things of that nature. So if you were turned off by Dune Part One, definitely go back and watch Dune Part Two here because it ratchets everything up. By tenfold from the first movie, and it's now that all the lore and the world building's done, it kind of really gets into the meat of the movie. And the first movie, or the meat of the book. The first movie was really the first 100 pages of the book. So it really didn't get into much other than, like I said, world building and setting up lore and whatnot. Really, the heart of the first book here, the first book is Dune Part 2. So, and all the performances in it are great. No one's phoning it in this movie. Denis Villeneuve really brings out the best out of all the actors. He's really passionate about Dune because he grew up on it, reading it as a youth, and he always wanted to make the movie. And he was really the person to do this. And like the shots gets in this movie, the cinematography is great. All the performances are great. I'm not gonna go too much into depth in it here because I talked about Dune at length on the channel, and you have probably heard or seen all kinds of things about it. All the Lisan al Gaib memes that are out there. I'm sure you're familiar with Dune, but if somehow you haven't seen the movie, definitely go watch it. And if you were turned off by the first part just because of I didn't think it was slow personally, but I'm a Dune fan, so I'm all into the lore. But if you were turned off because the first part was slow or kind of had a lot of world building to do, definitely come back for the second part here because it is really astounding what Denis Villeneuve was able to accomplish here. This movie deserves all of the Oscars. I'm sure it will get some, but definitely probably not as many as it deserves. I don't know. The Oscar committee, the Academy, is kind of adverse to science fiction movies. The Lord of the Rings movies got Oscars, deservedly, but since then, Lord of the Rings was really the first science fiction movie to kind of break through their bias. And since then, there's been a few movies here and there that have gotten their due. Joker as a comic book movie, that was one of the comic book movies that kind of broke through as well. But not a lot of science fiction movies get a lot of love from the Oscars. So I don't know how much love it'll get from the Oscars, but it definitely deserves every Oscar. Cinematography, it deserves Best Director, for actor for Timothy Chalamet, all sorts of costume design and whatnot, editing, all of that it deserves. Adapted screenplay because it's from a book. Give it all the Oscars. But yeah, so y'all know I'm a big Dune fan, so I'm biased. But Dune is number one on my top 10 list. And that is a wrap for my top 10 favorite movies of 2024. We're already in 2025, and I've already seen a couple of the 2025 releases already, so I'm starting my new list for 2025. And like I said at the beginning, overall, I saw just under 50 movies, and many of them I saw a couple or three times in the theaters. And I actually have a list of all the movies I've seen and their rankings, and I give them grades as well based on my enjoyment of them. So I'll put a link to a doc of that list in the description, as well as I'll post that on my social media like I did last year for y'all if you're interested in seeing my rankings of other movies. There was a lot of movies that just barely made the cut. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 was really great. That would get like an honorable mention. I think it was like number 12 on my list. The Substance is a really great movie. It would be in my top 10 if not for the third act. I thought the first two acts are really strong in that movie, and then it kind of gets a bit too esoteric in the third act for me. So it just missed the top 10. The Substance. Juror number 2 with Nicholas Holt is another really great movie that I recommend, but just barely missed the cut. Transformers 1, the Transformers animated movie, that really surprised me. That just barely missed the cut. I think that was like at 13 or 14 on my list. or maybe even like 12, somewhere around there, like top 15. If I made a top 15, it would make it. Transformers 1 is a really great movie that I was not expecting to be as good as it was. So there was a lot of movies that just barely missed the cut for one reason or another. Furiosa is another one that just missed the cut. But if you're interested in seeing what my rankings of all the movies I saw were, like I said down in the description, I'll put a link to the list and on my social media. If you follow those, you can see those as well. So definitely make sure you follow my social medias, which are in the description and on the channel as well. And next up will be my most anticipated movies for 2025 and my comic book movie preview for 2025 as well. We're getting into the new year, so lots of new content because of the strikes. They A lot of the movies got pushed back to 2025, the filming and then releasing. So 2025 is a stacked year. There's going to be a lot of great movies. Superman, Fantastic Four, a whole lot of great movies, Thunderbolts, all sorts of great movies to look forward to. So make sure you leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel for all the content on all of those movies moving forward in the future. Make sure you let me know down in the comments what your favorite movies of 2024 were, and I will see y'all another day.